Captain Dan here, Goober Time Guide Service. In today's video, we've got the perfect catfish live well for you. We guide for catfish on the mighty James River, and that requires a big old live well for these big monster catfish that we catch. Now, whether you're looking for a tournament live well to keep some fish healthy all day, a place to store some eaters, or maybe just a place to revive some fish while you've got a whole bunch of rods going down, this is the build for you. The best part about this build is it's really simple, doesn't require a lot of tools, not a lot of parts, and it's pretty cheap, all things considered. We started by picking up a used toolbox on Facebook Marketplace for about 60 bucks. It did have a couple holes in it, so we repaired those. Let's take a look at that process here. All right, so I got this truck box right here on Facebook Marketplace. It's in really good shape, just has a couple holes in it from mounting. It's got one in that corner, one here, one in the middle, and then of course 2 more over here. So 5 total. I've already patched up 3 of them, and I'm going to show you how I'm doing that. This is a new skill for me, but I've got these aluminum brazing rods and they actually work out pretty easy. I'm probably still going to do something in addition to this, but watch how easy these go on. So you got to start by really heating up the area. You got to get it pretty good and hot. Don't get it so hot that you melt through your aluminum truck box. So then just keep checking it with your aluminum brazing rod as you go. You don't want to put your aluminum rod right in the flame and melt it. You want to heat the material up so that the material is actually what's melting your rod. And of course, clean this up really well beforehand. I've washed this truck box down a couple times before I started this process. And I found just kind of working around the outsides builds up your material a little bit, then you can eventually cover the inside. So you can see it's starting to lay down some material here. And I'm sure there's a better method. What I'm doing, this is brand new to me, like I said, but it seems to be working. All right, now we're starting to melt down pretty good. I'm just putting a big old glob down on there. I do need this to be watertight, so I'm hoping to cover that hole. And I'm pretty satisfied with that right there. It looks like it's pretty much well covered there. All right, so now that we've given that some time to cool down a little bit, we're gonna go ahead and put an extra layer of security on here. I've got some marine goop right here. I've got this link down in the description along with everything else in this video. I'm just gonna pile a whole bunch of this on there and try and get all around the edges. I don't need any little water leaks ruining my day here. And then with a latex glove, I'm just gonna work that around a little bit. Make sure it's covered up really well. All right, now for the moment of truth, we're gonna fill this thing up and see if she holds water. Now, nobody's gonna make you click a thumbs up on this video and like it, but my sources do tell me that if you don't, you're gonna have this whole tournament live well set up ready to go and you're gonna skunk. So the best thing you can do is go down there and click that thumbs up, give yourself some tournament day luck. It really helps our channel out and we appreciate your support. All right, I've got this thing about 1/3 of the way full and I'm looking at the concrete around here, and aside from a little bit from where I was spraying the tank down, I don't really see any water dripping out, so I'm pretty comfortable with that. I doubt I'm going to fill this thing all the way up. Sometimes these truck boxes leak in the corners at the welds and everything, so we'll keep an eye on that. If I need to, I'll run a bead of caulk or some more marine goop or whatever I need to around those seams and seal it up. Now that we've got those all sealed up and this thing's holding water like a champ, it's time to start doing the plumbing work. Let's jump into this build. I'll show you how I'm going to build it out. The best part about it is it's super simple, really easy, and it's going to keep these fish super healthy. Now, the very first step that we're going to do here is figure out how we're going to drain this thing. A lot of people get kind of crazy with extra bilge pumps and all that. We're going to keep it simple. We're going to put a 1-inch drain plug on the bottom. Simple through-hole fitting. We've got everything in this project linked in the description box down below. So go down there, click on those links. It helps the channel out, and it's a nice, tidy place for you to get all these parts if you decide you want to do this build. Also down there, we've got a 1-inch drain plug. So when we want to hold water, we're going to put the drain plug in and close it. And when we need to empty this thing, we're going to drain it just like that. Super simple. One of the benefits to this is I am working with a pontoon boat, so as the water drains out of my live well, it can just flow right off the edge of the boat. I don't have to worry about it emptying into my bilge or anything like that. So you might need to come up with a hose system, but you could always put a hose on the back of this and let it flow out the back of the boat, or pump it out if you really need to. The one thing we do want to be careful with is this drain plug is going to sit pretty far off the floor. So instead of having, 1/2 inch of water sitting down there, we're going to take a Japanese handsaw and we're going to cut off the bottom here just so we can get that as close down to the bottom as we can, trying to empty out as much water as possible. So let's get that thing sawed up right here. So that's what we're looking at right there. We've got a nice flat bottom that's going to let us get that plug just a little bit lower down towards the bottom of the live well, get that little bit extra water out. All right, so I know my hole is going to go right in this bottom here, but I need to figure out where to put the center of my paddle bit right here. I'm using an 1.25 inch bit to make sure I can get around the threads here. That should work just perfect. I want this down towards the bottom. I got to take into account the thickness of the box, and I want it over towards the edge, but not too crazy. So all I'm doing is I put a little piece of painter's tape right here. Since I can't mark on a black box, it won't really show up too well. I'm going to put that right where I want it and right down the center of the through hole. Boom. That's about where I want to drill. Let's get that bad boy started. All right, let's double check that fits well. Yeah, that's gonna keep our plug just about a 1/4 inch off the bottom. All right, so now it's install time. I'm gonna take that piece. This is the side we chopped off with the drain. I'm gonna put a little bit of 5200 sealant on there. This stuff is super duty. We're gonna get a nice watertight seal around this thing. I'm even gonna put a glob across the bottom just because I want this thing watertight. I don't want it leaking on me. Okay, let's get that inserted and then screwed down. Okay, so that'll come popping through the bottom. Let's put our collar on that, and this will help us tighten everything up. We want that nice and snug on the inside. Now, one thing I'm gonna do at this point is take the time and just get a little glove on there and get around the seal. Make sure I've got that 5200 caked all the way around that through hole. We want to do everything we can to minimize leaks here. And this is a little bit annoying and a little bit extra work, but getting that extra 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch down there is really going to help us out. Just got to take the handsaw and chop off the bottom of this lock nut right here. I'm going to try and do myself a favor and get it lined up so that edge is flush with the bottom of the box, so I don't have to cut through all that material. That'll sit nice and flat on the bottom of the boat. Here's another point where you have to make a decision. Are you gonna let this hook up to a tube and run it out somewhere in your boat, or are you gonna make it nice and flush? I'm gonna chop it flush because I know I'm just gonna let it drain right out the back of the boat, and I'm gonna plug it from the inside. If you don't have one of these Japanese hand saws, these things are awesome. I'll link it down below. Now you really want to think your plumbing through, and it really starts with a little bit of math working backwards here. Think about the size of the fish you want to keep in your live well. I might have, you know, a couple 50-pounders, 60-pounders in there at a time, maybe 2 or 3 of them. So I bought a truck toolbox that's 60 inches long, 19 inches across. Now I need to decide how far up the back wall I want to put my overfill. So that's going to determine how many gallons I can hold that are going to hold oxygen. Now, the more water you can hold in a live well, the healthier your fish are going to be. It holds more oxygen, they won't burn through it as fast, and it's just going to be better off for your fish. But at the same time, you take up a lot of room on your boat. So 60 inches was really about the maximum that I was willing to give up on my boat. I could probably go to 70 if I really wanted to, but this is going to be plenty. I also know a really big catfish on the James River is going to be a little bit over 50 inches, so they'll have plenty of room lengthwise in here. Now I've got a couple markings in here I've got to work around based on the shape of my truck box, unless I wanted to vent out the side here. So for that reason, I'm not going to give any exact measurements in this video. You got to play around with what you find, the shape of your box, and kind of make it work for you. I want to get my overflows as far up the wall as I possibly can to maximize my water in this box. And at the same time, I want to make sure that my water level stays below part of my fill, and you'll see why in a little bit here. So I'm probably looking at about 13 inches high. Maybe I can get it up to 14 or 15. That's going to put me in the 65 to 70 gallon range of water that can actually hold in the box. All right, next up on the list, we got to think our plumbing coming into the box. So we've given some thought to our plumbing. We're ready to lay things out here. I've got my 3 center holes here. So the next thing I did is I bought 2 more through holes. These are 3/4 inch. So I downsized from the bottom drain. This one is 1 inch hole diameter, inner diameter. This one's 3/4, so quite a bit smaller. We're gonna put 2 of these in. The idea is we're gonna have 3 3/4 holes. One of them is gonna be our fill. We want one to drain. Ideally, as much as going in, we can have flowing out, but if I need to, I can open up a second. If you wanna make sure that your overflow can outrun your input, you could just put a 1 inch hole in right here, but I kind of wanted to play around with it, be a little different, and have some options for myself. So I'm gonna put 2 of these through holes in. I'm not actually gonna use the through hole. I bought them for the collar. We're gonna use a different fitting that's really gonna be the big difference maker in my build versus a lot of the other truck box builds that you see on the market. Before I go to town with my paddle bit, I'm just gonna drill these holes ahead of time, just so I have a guide hole, a pilot hole. It's gonna help me make sure everything's lined up and it doesn't go walking away on me. After that, 1 inch paddle bit, and drill those 3 holes. Paddle bit's making a bit of a mess, so we're gonna go to a stepper bit on this. I'm gonna watch the 1 inch mark and make sure I don't overrun it. What it helps is you do a step and just kind of pull it out, check your fit, make sure everything's good. One reason I was trying to avoid the step bit is because it does drill your hole at a taper, so you got to drill it from the inside and the outside, but it does make a nice clean hole, so we'll do that for the rest of these. Okay, really happy with the fit here. Let's clean this all up, get it vacuumed up, and get back to work. Okay, so we're using these cam lock fittings right here. If you've never used these before, they're pretty cool. I'll show you what these are all about later in the video when we go to attach to the boat. But I'm gonna put 3 of these in. These are males, so the threads are on the actual cam lock fitting. Those are gonna go in the holes. Okay, now 2 of these cam lock fittings right here, I'm gonna take those through holes, take the bushings off of them, and I actually chopped them flat just like I did with the other through hole, just because they've got to fit inside the space inside the toolbox. So I'm essentially going to lay these in there like that. It's got just enough room where it's going to lay flat across the bottom. These 2 are going to be my overflows, so they're going to get these fittings on them. This is the perfect opportunity to put a little bit more of that 5200 sealant on here to make sure you get a nice watertight seal. We want water coming out of the box right there, but only going through the through-hole fittings, not leaking around the outside of the fitting. Okay, this last fitting is going to be a little different. We're going to take that same male thread on the cam lock fitting and go into a 3/4 90-degree PVC fitting. That's a slip on one side, thread on the other. I've got 2 washers on here just to take up some of the slack so I can really tighten this down tight and get a nice seal in that. Already put a little bit of 5200 on there, but it's kind of hard to get it all going, so I've got it set. I'm going to get this thing installed. All right, let's take a minute and go over why I went with cam locks on these. They're a little bit of a pain in the butt, but the beauty of it is it's such a clean system. I have these caps and there's all kinds of fittings you can put on here. So I just take that cap, shove it on there, flip these 2 levers down. Those are the 2 cams and it's locked. If you really want to, you can take this pin out and shove it right on through the top here so that lever can't open back up. And now you've got a watertight seal. This is essentially a plugged outflow and you can put whatever you want on here. So I can have another one right here. Cam lock that down. And now both of my overflows are plugged. No water is going to leak out of this box. So you could use it as dry storage or you can control the outflow. The other great part of this system is I can make all kinds of accessories and just attach them in right here. If I don't want this dumping right on the floor, I can just take another tube, cam lock it on, and now it can outflow through my bilge or maybe over the side of the boat, or I can just run it to a specific spot on my pontoon floor and all the water can drain out from there. And at the end of the day, I can pop it off, shove my hoses wherever I need to, and then pop a cap on. And there we go. You could do the same thing with garden hose fittings or whatever you need to, but this is just a whole lot faster and easier, I think. So here's what the inside of our box is looking like right now. We've got our plug right there. That's our 1-inch hole. We can plug that up if we need to. We got our 2 overflows up there and our 90 coming out. So now we need to plumb this thing in. So the way I have this set up, we're going to be filling it down there. Any of the nasty sediment or fish regurgitation or anything like that can flow out the bottom. I can also peel off the top layer right here and let it flow out the top. So I have options to take the bottom or top layer of water out. Let's get that pipe in and I'll show you how that's going to be set up. This is one of the coolest parts of the build. Now this next part in the build is what's really going to keep our fish healthy. I've got this flow right piece right here, and the beauty of it, it has a Venturi up top. So I'm not just going to be pumping fresh river water into my toolbox right here, my Livewell. I'm actually going to be pumping in some extra air too. So let's get this installed and I'll show you how it all works. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is take a piece of Schedule 40 PVC and just roughly cut it down. I'm going to cut it long on purpose. Okay, so this piece, I want to use it to bring my inflow right here, my input, all the way over to the other side of the tank so I can fill it from that corner. So we're going to do the majority of the run with this PVC right here. I'm not going to glue anything in, especially not yet. I'm just going to dry fit it. And I'll determine where I need to cut based on where my other piece is going to fall in my flow right. The flow right does have a barb on the end, so I have a little bit of 3/4 PVC tubing. I'm going to heat this up, put it on there. Then I'm going to go to a barb PVC fitting right there and slap that on my pipe. So let's get this part installed, then I'll know exactly where I need to cut that 3/4 pipe. So I want to make sure this flow rate is pretty much as far into the corner as I can get. So I'm going to mark my PVC where I need to cut to jam that thing up into the corner. If you want to, you could glue these fittings up. I'm just going to slide them in and rely on the compression fitting. Now the main reason for that decision is just in case I ever run into a situation where this gets plugged up, I want to be able to take it apart and clear any blockage that I have. Okay, the next piece, you're probably seeing the issue already, and we do have a plan for this. We can't have this just hanging there. I mean, you could, but I want it tucked up nice and tidy. It's going to hide right behind that lip, and I just want to make sure it's not going to rattle around or get broken. Now all I'm going to do with this is take my 3/16" drill bit and drill 2 holes, and we're just going to use a cable tie to pop that up in there. Okay, so 1 cable tie, and that's up there nice and sturdy. If I ever have sagging issues down the line, I can always put another set in right here, but I'm pretty happy with the way this is working. Now what I really appreciate about this build is that when you're looking into it, everything's pretty much hidden. When I'm in there trying to wrestle with these big catfish, all I've got to do is avoid that corner. All this stuff is tucked up underneath here. I'm not going to bump it. Catfish have a little bit of a lip down here. If they hit it, it's not really going to do much. And you can't really mess up too much over on this side either. All right, so pretty happy with how that's coming along. We're going to let everything cure up in here, head on out to the boat and install our pump so we can pump water in this. I'm not lugging buckets around. We're going to make this a nice clean install. It's going to be all handled in the boat with a switch. Now, one of the most important things you can do is pick one of the coldest days of the year to come out here and do the plumbing in your boat. We're going to put a switch panel up in here so we can run this pump and operate it. We got that right here, ready to go. I'll have a secondary switch for a future project, and this thing should button up pretty quick here. Then I'm just going to center that step bit right there and start drilling in. Ran into a little bit of interference from a pump behind there that I thought I had clearance for, but I didn't, so We'll install this a couple inches lower. We'll put our switch panel here, cover up that hole, no big deal. Put some Teflon tape on here. Let's get this thing installed. All right, so that's on there real nice. Nice clean install. Let's get this part cut out so we can get our switch panel in there. So I've made a quick little cardboard template, just measured it out against my switch panel. We're gonna put some tape down so I can actually draw it on. And we're gonna trace that bad boy out right there. Now, before I fully install this thing, I'm gonna do a little bit of electrical work on the backside just to make my life easier in case I have to service it down the road. Okay, real simple setup here. All I did was chop my two pieces here, extended this wire so I could get to this waterproof plug. There's the other end of it. I'll hook that up to my pump, and I squeezed a fuse in here so I can protect this circuit. Let's go get this thing installed on the boat. We're gonna rivet it down. And these are just pop rivets, so we're gonna lock this thing down here. Looks good, nice clean install. So now if you're wondering what things look like from behind the scenes here, this is our port that we put in, that's our cam lock, and here's our switch panel that we put in. So all I need to do now, and this is really the beauty of the whole thing, take my cam lock piece right here, come on in from wherever I'm gonna attach. I think I'm gonna come around the other side of that hose, push it in, and flip my levers back. And that's gonna lock that thing into place. Now, another nice thing about the cam lock, so you don't have to worry about it and you have a little peace of mind, is they come with these clips. You can stick those right through. That's gonna make sure that your clips never unfasten on you. And that's kind of why I went with those expensive fittings right there. Really nice, easy plug and play. As you can tell, we've got a nice power pickup right here. So all we have to do is pull our positive and negative from that, run it up to our switch, and go out to our pump. Now, the other thing I had to think about was how I was gonna route this pump. So right now I've got it kind of routed over here. I was thinking about mounting my pump right here. Since I have another couple of pumps inside of here, there's one on each side. Here's a pickup. Then we've got a pump on the other side. So I was thinking about mounting it here since my water line is way up here. That'd be underwater all the time. Then I got to thinking, this little section of the pontoon right here is always full of water, even when we're underway. So if I want to be able to pull some water into this thing while we're moving down the river, might be a good option to throw it in there. Also gives me the opportunity to mount this pump without drilling any holes, and I can always install it back over on this side later if I need to. So for now, I'm going to cut this pipe to an appropriate length where I can just drop it right into that well. So now that we have that cut to length, we need to install our pump. So I threw a couple zip ties on here to manage our cable a little bit. We're going to shove that pump down into that well. That's going to sit down there real nice. Now we'll be able to work on our wiring a little bit, but first let's finish plumbing everything up into the boat. So now what we're going to do here for the rest of our plumbing is I've got a cam lock fitting right here that's going to attach onto my inlet. It's going to go to my spray bar. This is going into my tubing right here. I will put a clamp on that later once I get this all dialed in. Right now we're just doing the dry fit. So let's shove that cam lock on there. At some point I'll probably have to figure out a 90-degree coming off the back of this. That was one thing I didn't think through the best, but it's gonna work for at least this weekend. Now we need to figure out how long to cut this pipe. So we're gonna have another fitting just like that on here, and we need it to go into here. So I know I'm gonna have at least enough pipe if I cut here. We'll probably have to do a second cut on this. We're gonna get this other fitting on here so we can see precisely where we need to chop that thing. And it's looking like we'd be all right if we ended up right around there. And that's the beauty of this system. Now I can pop that tubing off, take both my fittings, work on it outside here. I don't have to stick my hands down there and wrench myself around to try and plumb it. All right, so there we go. There's our finished piece. Let's test fit it one more time before I go put these clamps on here. All right, that looks like it'll work well. No big kinks in here or anything. Happy with it. And again, once you get the setup in the boat, if you don't want to risk any leaks, especially if you don't have a pontoon where you have a bilge to worry about, just put your clips in and you got a little peace of mind. I'm not going to bore you with the electrical. All we need to do is wire this thing up and I'll see you on the water for the test run. All right, we've got the plug in. Now all we need to do to fire this thing up is flip our switch on. It's going to draw water in through there, shoot across our PVC pipe, grab some air on its way down, aerate that water, and pump in some nice fresh river water. And the nice thing is we can keep pushing new water in. It'll work its way across the tank and go out our overflows, which are tucked up right there. So we're constantly cycling fresh water through here and pumping extra air into it. All right, so here we go. Now you can see that Venturi at work. You can see all the bubbles, all that air getting pumped into the water as it's pumping water into the tank. If I cover up that little hole, you can see it's just water coming in, no bubbles. There's the bubble action. All right, so now that the water's in there and it's up to level, all I need to do is pull off one of these overflow caps right here, and any excess water can start flowing out. If my pump starts to overrun that, all I do is pull off the other one and it can drain off of both sides right here. So the way this is set up, our pump will never be able to overrun our maximum outflow here. And then when you're done fishing for the day, just pull the drain plug and empty that bad boy out. All that live well will drain down real quick. Everything going out of that 1-inch hole in the bottom down there. And then with my setup, it just pours out the back of the boat. No harm, no foul. Now, if you're sticking around to the end, I hope you really liked that video. We've got a couple more just like it on the channel. They're linked down below, and you're gonna wanna go watch those next, because this one, it's done.